everybody. Good morning to all our Filipino friends who are starting to tune in or maybe will be tuning in. Also, good afternoon to our West Coast friends and good evening to all our East Coast folks to our webinar on AI in education. Andito na naman po ako sa wakas at long last. I get to go live once again on my channel, Ginang White Online, and also on my Facebook page, Mrs. White Online. I hope you all are doing well out there, wherever you are. And I am so excited to share with you the latest in education, especially the use of AI. So before we get started, of course, we know very well that AI is here to stay. But before we get started, an EdTech expert and AI literacy expert will be joining us today and will join me as we explore about AI. And I'm sure we know that we have used it before. We're going to explore some of the uses of AI and also some tools useful in schools and some word of caution when using AI. But before we do that, let's introduce first our special guest. Our special guest today is Dr. Beth Dewhurst. She has been an educator for over 30 years, and she has been a literacy subject matter expert and writer with an impact as a service global education technology company. Oops. Sorry. She taught an online master's program in EdTech and prepared over 160 countries for K-12 certification at an online university and served Washington, D.C. learners and families. For most of her time, she was a DC Public Schools reading intervention middle school educator and was named 2017 Washington DC Teacher of the Year. She has also directed educational nonprofit services for DC students and adults. Her doctorate is in educational technology and focused on how to leverage internet communication technologies to improve literacy gains in urban schools, U.S. Title I schools here in the US, of course. Currently, she serves on several community education boards and leads a digital learning and workforce development program serving adolescents and young adults, referred to by juvenile justice and child protective service agencies. She is also on the faculty of her local community college, teaching in person, hybrid, and asynchronously. She and her husband have 3 adult children and enjoy exploring trails in the woods and time with family and friends. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome Dr. Beth Dewhurst. Here she is. Hi.
Hi, so happy to be with you.
Yes, me too. And thank you so much for accepting my invitation to be a part of my AI webinar, which I have planned, I think, almost a year already, but here we are. Thank you so much for joining me today. So how are you? How have you been?
Doing well. It's I think the third day of spring, and I'm looking forward to flowers and green leaves coming soon here. I'm outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania now. I left DC 4 years ago. So looking forward to greener outdoor time soon.
Oh, I'm sure. And we didn't get the chance to get together in Washington, D.C. because of the pandemic and all that stuff. So, well, maybe I should visit you there in
Come on
Pennsylvania.
out.
I'm sure it is. And how's the weather right now? Is it
It's about
colder?
50s and cloudy. So
50s and
not
cloudy.
as
It's
not as
72.
lovely as California where you are.
Yes, it's 72 here right now, clear skies. And so I cannot complain with the weather over here, but I look forward to visiting you one time over there. So
Absolutely.
I'll let you know pretty soon.
Very good.
So today it's AI. So I guess we're going to get started, right?
Yeah, let's dive in.
Let's dive in. So, what is AI? Beth, I'm sure you know what it is, but for our folks here who are still trying to learn what AI is, let's take a look at what we have in store. So we know AI, it's all about creating smart computers, right? And that can perform some human tasks. Is that right?
You're
Yes.
on
I
track.
mean, you have seen a whole lot of movies that has AI. I mean, Black Mirror, for example. I don't know. Have you seen Black Mirror before?
I did.
Yes. It's pretty scary because you wanted that robot to be as intelligent as humans. But there are two types of AI. The first is your narrow AI, so which is kind of like a limited capabilities, like recognizing your faces in photos, or have you done those online chess games and then you play with the computer and stuff like that?
I haven't, but I know people that have.
Yes. So that is considered as a narrow AI because it's limited to only one area. And then you have the general AI. This is more like a super smart computer that can think and learn and at various situations just like humans, and these are machines that can actually adapt to new challenges and kind of like learn, right? So AI is making machines pretty much intelligent. So we're going to dive into it. And if some of you might be asking if you have used AI already, of course we do. Isn't that right, Beth?
Absolutely. I think a lot of us are using it every day and not even knowing it. And it's already in if you're using very common apps for educators, as simple as Google, um, Office 365, just the basic apps we use to do our work, never mind in a lot of education apps,
Yeah.
which we'll talk about in a minute.
Yes, and if you have your Face ID turned on your phone, hey, that's it. If you can categorize your emails a certain way, hey, that is AI. If you like watching streaming services, the reason why they ask you, hey, you might be interested to watch this, that is also AI, as well as those little animation coming out of your Amazon saying that since you look this or you bought this, maybe you're interested for this one. And so it's pretty funny that it's like, I don't know, shaping our everyday thing, so which is pretty amazing. And Beth, I'd like you to share with us this graph, which is very, very interesting. We talked about this, so I'd like you to please enlighten us with this graph right here, because we know chat gpt has been very, very popular.
Sure. So I think all of us know if you bought a laptop or a cell phone, that same model does not stay the same price for very long. Computing power in general doubles every 2 years. What this graph is showing for AI tools, some of which some may be familiar with, I know it's a little small, but the little dots on there are AI tools, different versions, for example, of Chat GPT. And what it's showing is over time, from 2020 to now, that instead of 2 years of doubling computing power, AI doubles its strength every 7 months. And that's doubling its strength with at least 50% accuracy in the task it was
Mm.
given to do. So on the vertical line, you can see different tasks. Answering a straightforward question, all the way up to a task that might take a human several months. And so the big takeaway from this graph is it's really important, I think, for educators to invest some time and energy in talking with at least one or two other colleagues
Right.
and exploring this together. Don't feel like we have to do it all on our own, but collaboratively, I think it's really important to invest because it's only becoming more and more prevalent and important, not just for how we do our work as educators, but if we're going to prepare learners for the digital age and the
Yes.
jobs they will have to function with. For example, At the community college where I teach, I'm in the humanities side, but there's all kinds of industry programs. And, one of the instructors that teaches forklifts was teaching their students about AI in the forklift. So it's ubiquitous, it's everywhere, and just making the point that this is a good investment of our time and energy as educators.
Yes, I totally agree with this, because for me as an educator, this has been very useful for me. And we're going to talk
Right.
about different things of how AI can actually help us in unlocking its power. And I know, Beth, you are a very big AI literacy advocate for teachers, students, anyone, which is why we need to unlock what can AI do for us. And for me, this is actually the most important thing, which is writing. I'm pretty sure you will agree on that, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And for me, when students start using AI in the classroom, as I've heard from our English teachers, it's amazing. It's great. However, they fall on this mistake of like, oh, I'm just copy and pasting it. What are your thoughts about that when students are, using AI in writing?
So this is a really big topic. When I'm teaching, whether it's secondary level or in higher ed, I start with a very transparent conversation around what AI is, why it matters, like we were just talking about a minute ago, and how it's relevant to how we're going to learn in the course. So, for example, in my writing course, um, there are places where we use AI freely, and we'll
Right.
talk about the rationales for why. But then there are all the way to the other end of the spectrum where I don't want to see any AI because I want their raw, unfiltered attempts at demonstrating the writing skills and knowledge that we're working on. Say, for example, in a discussion board. I don't want to see AI right now. I want to see what you got so far so your peers and I can give you specific and actionable feedback. And I think we have we'll look at a one way to approach this in an upcoming slide.
Yes. And I feel like for me, as someone who teaches at the university, I know they have AI policies.
Hmm.
However, it's not fully understood by the students, because I'll share with you just a quick experience I had. So, when you read discussions from students like over and over again, you recognize a certain pattern, how it's written. And so after I was like, wait a second, I mean, I'm teaching biology, right? So, any facts that you put out there that's, science facts, then it's going to stay that way, right? However, it kind of, when you read it, it sounds not human when they write it. So I recognize, like, no, this isn't written by that person.
Hmm.
Even if I don't see, because I teach asynchronously, so I never really meet my students face to face. So I don't even know what they look like, how they are as a person. So that makes it extra challenging for me. Just like, wait a second, is this person really speaking intelligently, or they use AI? So that's something that I'm still trying to like learn how I can approach it in a way that I'm not being like, hey, are you using AI or something like that? Although I give guidance on, on some announcements that I have when they're using AI, which I think has helped and kind of like lessen that. Because like the first week was like, oh my God, some people are using AI already in their discussion posts. So I thought I'd share with you. Do you have any experience like that?
For sure. I've never had an experience yet where if I've approached, even if I'm teaching asynchronously and I respond to, a draft essay, let's say, um, and I say, it appears, I always phrase it this way: it appears to me you've used AI in a way we did not agree would be okay for this particular
Yeah.
assignment. I'd like you to fix it, and here's some suggestions of how. Every
Hmm.
single time they were just welcoming the chance to fix it. And I think, you know, learning is a messy process if we're doing authentic learning, and we need some gray areas here, and to allow ourselves as educators to find out what that looks like for us and our learners. um, you know the the slightest indicator of plagiarism, it's an automatic zero and just going
Yeah.
right to punitive. I don't think that there's much learning happening if that's where we're going to try to approach it. And I think there's a caution there too, more and more as and we'll look at some of these, different teaching apps, Turnitin, what have you,
Yeah.
try to scan for AI use. It's not 100% fail safe. So I think we need to be cautious about saying there's AI just because it pops up in an app we're using. Could be, may not
Hmm.
be. And we need to be careful, I think, and
Yes.
be critical thinkers,
Yes.
as we approach it.
Yes. Definitely. Also, just to add on to, I've used Canva. It was amazing generating those images. You just have to put a prompt and stuff like that. That's great. Also, some illustrate some presentations or report. I've been like experimenting it on my own, to create this and that because I love Canva. I'm not really, I'm not supposed to plug, but it has helped me like improve like my logo. In fact, our banner is actually from generating images, giving me an idea. It's like what kind of like graphics I wanted. Also, as a teacher, when I was creating quizzes or topics that will organize my thoughts on what I'll teach for the day, I use AI pretty much to ask for ideas on a topic and quiz questions too. And then just put together, I weed out the ones that I feel like will be useful for me. So that's basically how it goes. Have you used any of these like ways for AI, like generating images? Have you done any of these, Beth?
So I've used a bunch of different ones, and I think educators that watch this could just Google top AI fueled or AI apps for educators, and almost all of them will let you use it for free, and then you can decide, do you want to use one of their lesson plan generators or,
Yeah.
um, like you were saying, image generators. There's a lot of interesting things. There's one called Character AI, has hundreds of characters like Edgar Allan Poe,
Oh,
you know,
nice.
current and uh, non-living, fictional and real personalities that have been trained through user interaction and large language model data. Now, these are also things that if you use them, like if you want to have your students interview Percy Jackson, uh,
Okay.
uh, or any other character that's on there, you have to explore it yourself as an educator first and vet it. But there's all kinds of interesting ways, both for planning and for learning
For
activities,
learning
that you can explore with a simple Google search and find free tools to try
tools.
out.
Yes, fantastic. And this one probably would be the most useful for me when I was when we were completing our dissertation. So this one I have to add because the audio interviews that I had done, AI has helped me transcribe the audio to text. And then after that, it not only that, like, the pauses and stuff like that during the interview, it also has helped me identify right away some of the themes that um, the people I interviewed in my study, is trying to say. So it kind of streamlines the way I will have to write my, data analysis and all that. And I'm sure you did that, right?
It's very helpful. And if you're thinking about something like ChatGPT, typing in a prompt, as you type in prompts and see what you get back, type in another prompt, the AI is learning and becoming more and more useful as you
Useful.
work with it. You're teaching it literally. And a lot of activities I've used and others use is around, say, having ChatGPT summarize a particular chapter in a book we give it, and then having the learners deconstruct it. What did AI get right or wrong? Challenging the responses of the AI is a really good practice, and I think relevant for how they'll need to use AI in the workplace.
Yes, fantastic. And also writing codes. I
Yep.
didn't know this. I don't know. I haven't explored that. Code a web page, code a game. I don't know. I did try creating a presentation. I use this app. It's like Slides AI. And so I actually just uploaded a chapter of the book that I'm about to teach. And then after I uploaded it, it actually generates sort of like an outline and then created that slide. It's actually an extension on Google Slide that I made. And so it actually helped me, but it's very extensive. Again, if you're just going to use it straight up, probably you'll spend about 3 hours to teach it. Then, normally I only teach like probably like 30, 40 minutes. And then the rest would be like more of like an activity. And I'm teaching adults now and I can't lecture for 3 hours straight.
No.
So that's what I experienced. So it's very extensive.
Speaking of generating presentations, could I just show a quick example?
Yes. Yes.
Awesome. All right. Let's see here. So what you're seeing now is a small case study I did in Virginia, here in the US, where I went to a friend's reading intervention classroom and just jumped in with ChatGPT. I wanted to see how intuitive it would be for digital age learners who were struggling 2, 3, 4 grade levels below in their reading levels. And this particular, and they all found it very accessible. And they all had very different reactions to it. Some thought it was awesome. One could not get past the idea that it was cheating to get any kind of help at all.
Hmm.
But this particular learner had a very difficult time, had significant challenges, but had a very creative mind. And so they were doing project-based learning, and his project was what to do with all the trash that they generated in their cafeteria. And he had it all on little post-it notes that he painstakingly sort of wrote out in broken sort of phrases and words. And so I showed him one of many free AI presentation apps called Tome, Tome. But others, this is now embedded, like you were saying, Carla, in Canva and other things, PowerPoint. And basically, we just helped him type in his key ideas, almost like a little outline, and said, generate a presentation. And his response was, this app is so genius, it makes me want to pass out. He jumped up out of his chair, kind of zipped around the room, and long story short, was so excited to have that barrier removed where he could get his ideas out to the world and share, like with his
Yeah.
class, with his parents at a presentation, with other teachers. And, it was interesting at this school because the teachers had never considered how just one little step of technology can really become a more equitable teaching environment. It just takes a little bit of investment of the teacher to get everybody's voice to the table, rather than viewing it as a hurdle that I have to scale. Because I know as educators, we hear the word
100%.
differentiation often, and we are already stretched so thin. But I think that's where it comes down to, for me anyway, what is going to give me the most return on investment, because my time is so limited. I would argue
Hmm.
an AI app like this for this kind of situation, where we're getting ideas out into the external world,
Hmm.
where then they can get feedback and continue to develop them, is really priceless. And it certainly was. It was for this learner.
Yes, I 100% agree with you in regards to um, using it in the classroom. I'm not against it. What I did notice though, when one of our teachers at my school where I'm working now, is when she mentioned about like, oh, I'm doing this exploration activity about AI, and so she really um, tried to educate her class to how to properly use it. She actually broke them apart into stations, and then some are using AI to generate images. Some students is exploring pretty much like when they use that chat GPT and they put a prompt. So she kind of started having them acquainted with the AI, and because she wanted to kind of like decipher, it's like, are they going to use it correctly and properly? And then when they, she's an English teacher, so when she started having, okay, I'd like you to write a piece about this topic, and I'd like you to use AI,
Hmm.
but there wasn't any clear expectations, as you have to say. And so she gauged and see, she ended up like having some of the kids like use it, and then some of them unfortunately have used AI not in the right way. So, which is why it's very important, like you said, that teachers should invest time in, really helping their students how to use them properly. And there are some helpful AIs that most likely most of us have used. So I've already mentioned about Canva, how extensive I've been using it. Have you heard about Magic School AI?
I
I'm sure
have.
you
I haven't.
do.
I haven't. I a lot of the teachers I used to teach for certification were using it. I haven't necessarily. I use a couple other things, but they were very happy with it.
Oh yeah, it is. I tried using it to write a lesson plan, and then I just put some little keywords and stuff, that this is what I'm going to teach. This is what I need my students to learn, or whatever. So those are like the keywords. It actually created a very good, I would say, basic lesson plan, that will help me kind of like streamline what I have to teach for the day. I mean, it doesn't beat you writing authentically on your own, but it does save time. That's what I noticed about it. It'll give me ideas like, how am I going to write my learning objectives for the day that has to do with this? Is that what I really wanted to teach for that day? And it even tells you like what kind of formative assessment um, I'm about to give the kid. So it was helpful for me, and I recommend it. It also helps you write a rubric, depending on what metrics you want to generate in terms of, like, let's say, a presentation, or when they do a writing piece and stuff like that. So chat
Yeah,
gpt, have you used it?
yeah, quite a bit. And I would say for all of these, the more you use it, it will learn what you need and become
Mhm.
quicker and more effective in terms of its output. Um, you have to be aware of, for example, ChatGPT, if you're on the most recent versions, it's going out and pulling from the internet, as well as everything that it's ever been given as it was
Given.
being developed. So there are current, like, copyright issues.
Oh,
It doesn't take long, just if you start reading about AI and that it's pulling so much of other people's creations into what it produces for you. Just something to be aware of.
oh,
If you're
okay.
using
That's
if you're using APA or MLA, their policies have rapidly evolved to include how to, attribute in content. So that's also something to think about, especially if you're in secondary or higher ed.
yeah,
Um, and just one other quick thought in general about all of these. I think a good framework perhaps is, you know, they will take the kind of the mental work that is, that maybe we don't have to invest as educators, when writing lesson plans, unit plans, a course outline for the year, a scope and sequence, an assessment, project-based learning,
yeah,
descriptions and rubrics, all of it, and get us, 50, 75, 85% done, and then we go in, like you were saying, and make it how we want it to do. But we don't have to start from the 1 yard line on that. And I think
yeah,
that's a really good time and energy saver, so that we can put a lot of criteria in our prompts when we use something like ChatGPT. And it's as simple as typing into a dialog box,
yeah.
um, and saying, I have, a learner who is, at such and such level in English. I have another learner who has this need and that need, and it will throw in the differentiation options for us as well.
Ooh,
So everything we do to, like, get us further along, and then we can continue to personalize that for our learners. You know, who doesn't want to save time and energy as an educator?
Oh, yes. I'm all about that. I'm all for saving time and energy. And if Chat GPT can provide me that, Magic School AI can provide me that, it it makes a whole lot of difference. And I even have some of those AIs. I don't know if you've used it. So our school uses Power School.
Yeah.
And I came from a school wherein the grades can be transferred from Google Classroom to Infinite Campus, for example. So there's a capability of that doing it. And so I'm like, and then I moved to this school. It's like they don't have that capability. And good thing there's like extensions wherein it grabs the scores and then throw it into the grading system. So I'm like, boom, instead of me like writing it on a paper and then transferring it over. So those are like the
Exactly.
yeah. And so I mean, I'm all for it. If I can save a few minutes of my time, I'll go for it. And Beth, you were talking about something about the Turnitin or
Yeah.
Grammarly that would you share more about that?
Sure. I mean, the point I made earlier about tools like Turnitin, you know, they're going to give you a report on a sentence, a paragraph, a whole file of a student's work, and it'll say like 85% likely artificially generated versus human generated. And my caution was just that that's not 100% accurate, and we need to be careful. And that's a whole nother topic about how to, you know, school policy needs to be
Yes.
factored into that as well. And if it doesn't exist, I really believe educators need to talk together and see how can they be kind of the tip of the spear on driving
Yeah.
policy rather than it just being handed down to us and then we have to live with it. If we can get our voices out there about how we want to handle
You're right.
questionable things that get turned in, and just to keep in mind, you know, an app can make mistakes when evaluating whether it's human or AI generated. And then Grammarly, you know, again, depending on what you're trying to do with the students, what learning are you trying to have them generate and what evidence do you need to assess their learning? You know,
Right.
it's going to automatically prompt, AI is going to automatically prompt sentence, you know, syntax improvement. And it's so far beyond, you know, just a simple spelling and grammar check like
Yeah.
we might have had a few years ago. And so just to be aware that there's a lot of embedded AI and to really look at what's out there, because I guarantee students are finding these and many other solutions, just like we as teachers are
Yeah.
trying to work smarter, not harder.
Yes.
And I know so many educators go right to the place of that. Well, they just want to do absolutely nothing. I, I'm not sure that's true about
That's
our students, but I do think we need to like acknowledge that they're probably more savvy than we are. And so just to be aware that there are things like Grammarly is free and does a lot of AI prompting. So if you're grading writing, you know, just again, try to set up those trusting agreements ahead of time for how
ahead
you're
of
going to
time.
help them become better writers, even when using a tool like Grammarly when appropriate in your class.
Yes, exactly. I just wanted to point out the Otter AI. I've used this in meetings. It was amazing. I just had to click record and then normal meetings, even if it's like on Zoom or in person, I just turn it on. Right after that, it actually generates like this is what happened. This is a summary of the meeting and these are some action items that you guys need to do. It's like there is like a format that it actually uses in order for you to kind of like go back, because I know writing, do you have any like a secretary when you're doing a meeting and stuff like that, a staff meeting or a leadership meeting?
So I've been using AI in Teams and
Mhm.
Zoom, and you know, I'll bet you Google Meet has it. I haven't looked.
Yeah.
But yeah, more and more the meetings I'm in, it's AI recorded. But then again, you have to have, you know, agreement on that.
Yes.
It's this whole new realm of you know, like not just the video and audio recording, but then recorded into AI, which then whoever owns Zoom, for example, now has
Now
all the
has. That's
information, right?
true. That is true. I completely agree. And I was like, okay, well then I know that it actually helped me because I'm the one who's supposed to put together a summary report that day. So it actually helped me like write the summary report faster
Good.
than like going back to my notes. I have some a lot of scribbles and all that stuff, but it actually helped me. And I think Gemini is another kind of like a chat GPT type
Yeah.
of app. I think this is by Google. Now, this is like the most important thing that we need to consider when using AI. So, we just wanted to make sure that we know that AI can actually hallucinate or maybe generate false content. And there's a lot of things that I thought I've read that has like fake news almost, but it will still generate an AI. Is that the case? Like as we go, you keep using AI?
So, yeah, and it's interesting because hallucinate is a human term. We're kind of anthropomorphizing, essentially what is code. But yes, AI, because it's looking for patterns. It's going to do what it's trained to do, and it can generate false content and present it as it believes it to be true.
Yeah,
But it can also, as you were saying there, can be used to create, fake visual, audio, text that is becoming increasingly difficult to spot.
yeah,
And I love that you included built-in bias because that's another big thing. Like, who is training a large language model like ChatGPT, and whose worldview and whose culture is most represented in the data that it's been used to feed it?
right.
ChatGPT came on the scene in November of, was it 2023? And
Uh-huh.
within a week had a million users. So the longer it's being used, the more diversified it becomes, but still something to keep in mind of, does everyone in the world have equal access to things like ChatGPT? Probably not.
Probably
It's
not.
part of the
Yes.
whole inequity of technology as a whole.
Yes, that is very, very um important to note. And if you notice like deep fake videos or audios, I'm sorry, I have to include this because I saw it's like original and deep fake. It was like Alec Baldwin, and then they
Right.
just put in Trump's face or whatnot. But I mean, some people will go as far as that. I've seen a lot of like AI-ish type of there's one point wherein I use this app and it puts my face in there, and
Right.
then it was like the 1980s type of feel or look, but my face is there. So I'm assuming that is also what they are doing in that particular app. It's like AI app for images. So have you tried that app before?
I've tried something similar. And some of it's really fun. Some of it's something to think about in terms of, just when we're teaching students
Yeah,
how to vet and screen for things. Quick correction: ChatGPT came out in 2022, not 23. Sorry,
2022. Yes. And
2
this
years later.
last one I wanted to emphasize, which is the academic dishonesty. Why is it important that students need to understand like the proper use of AI?
Well, where I start with it is, we're all, as a learner, hopefully we're able to, like I just said, vet
The
sources.
sources.
That's part of being a digital citizen. Um, we need to be aware of what we put out in the world is accurate and cite things with reliable sources. Um, and you know, th- as if we're teaching at secondary level or even upper elementary, that's just really an important concept to keep in mind as you move through your educational experience and go out into the workforce. We have to know that we base decisions on accurate information,
Yes.
and know how to figure that out reliably. And so that's the same with whatever we produce, whether now or in the workplace. We're honest, and we want our work to be credited, and we should credit the work of others.
Yes.
So I kind of couch it in that kind of thinking.
Yes, and I'm pretty sure many of our educators out there um, are considering them, but they are just not sure how to proceed, which is why we really need to keep learning and educating ourselves um, in the use of AI. Up until now, I'm still learning. As a coach for teachers, I'm
Right.
still trying to learn, like, how am I going to help our teachers when it comes to time, like, yeah, I think I'm ready to do AI, because as teachers, some of them, it's like, if it's new, they don't want to try it. that's
Right.
that's for sure. But then again, they need to go with the time, because the students are exploring it already, so the more
Right.
reasons for the teachers to also start getting in there and starting to put themselves um, at the forefront, so that they can also help our students use them correctly and appropriately, right? And Beth, I know that you wanted to share something about this one, which is the "Can I use AI on this assignment" slide, and I'd like you to kind of like help us understand this very important document that you added
So
here with us.
yeah, so this comes from an Ed Week article. If you just Google Education Week, and measuring AI. It'll give you this article. I can also drop that link to you later, Carla, if you want.
Yeah.
I just thought, if you imagine a stoplight, red, yellow, green, that's really what we're looking at here. And I know that the smaller print's hard to see, but just paying attention to 0 to 4, you'll notice the top is red, 0 AI use down to 4, have at it, explore AI with whatever protocols and procedures you've established with your learners. That there's a continuum, and we get to decide as educators what level of AI use, if you wanted to use a tool like this. I thought this was a pretty good one in Education Week, that kind of gives examples of what you would use it for, and what kind of conversations you would need to have in terms of disclosure before you would give it to your learners to start using. And this could be something also that you talk about in your syllabus, in your parent night. You
Right.
could go through this ahead of time, so everybody's getting into it at the same time. And if they're using AI to any extent, on the far right column, disclosure, the students are disclosing using MLA or APA, like I mentioned before. And so it's full circle. The
Yeah.
students are clear on what you're expecting, and the students have to expose what they've used and cite it like any other source. So yeah, and one assignment could include all of these. It just depends on what your goals are and what you want them to demonstrate in terms of their learning.
Yeah. This is very helpful. And like you said, I need this for my school, so that I could also support our educators as they get into using AI more and more. So thank you for sharing this one, Beth.
Sure,
Um, at this point, I just wanted to maybe ask you questions
of
about
course.
about AI. I know you are, that you advocate for AI literacy, and anything that has to do with um, putting out AI in the classroom and really using them to the maximum. I should say. But maybe how if you could, maybe help us, how do you see like AI transforming that traditional educational practices in the next 5 years, you think? Do you?
I love the quote you have on this slide that, that it is an empowering tool for teachers and educators, not at a replacement. And lots of people have written about this idea that AI can do a lot of things, and is learning at an exponential rate, but it's not human, never will
Yeah.
be. And
Mhm.
I personally believe that it's the relationships that we build with our learners, even if it's asynchronous or hybrid, it's not necessarily in live via video or in person. It's whatever human relationships and nuances that we bring to bear that create a safe learning environment for students to actually take risks and learn authentically,
Yeah.
that's really um, the key strength we bring to the table as educators. We know what humans need to learn in
Yeah.
ways that AI never will.
Yes.
So just with that in mind, I mean, there's a lot of talk around, and there has been since ChatGPT became a global kind of sensation, that AI will replace jobs. And if you look at like the World Jobs Report and other sources, there's definitely a trend for a shift in the marketplace, which is like a trickle down effect to what we need to know as educators. But just starting with what we're preparing our learners for, um, the kinds of jobs and skills are changing rapidly because of AI, but the trends don't seem to indicate that there won't be, that there will be no need for humans in the workplace, because new jobs involving AI, programming AI, training AI, vetting the outputs of AI, those kinds of jobs are growing exponentially even now. So all the more reason for us to think about how we can incorporate AI. It seems like an absolute imperative in my mind,
Hmm.
um, in our learning environments, to include AI. And I think, in terms of how it will impact the classroom, I think it will become make learning more personalized.
Yeah.
That there's a big push around personalizing of learning, and what we might consider tutoring, but really, there's been like blended learning, if you remember,
Yeah.
that kind of which I used for many years as a reading intervention teacher, where you're using technology to do some whole group, but then they're off doing a more self-paced, personalized set of tasks and assessments, coming back, reflecting. Those kinds of blended learning,
Yeah.
personalized trends, I think, are accelerating, along with just full-on tutoring that's free through
Yeah.
AI. AI has been built into different apps that put it in a student's cell phone, and that can complement what is happening in the classroom. So making more accessible, particularly there's a language barrier or other learning
Yeah.
needs. So my hope is, like, greater personalization means more equity across the table in education for learners and educators.
Yes, I 100% agree. I was actually just thinking about, like, how are we going to support our English learners, our students with disabilities, and also leveraging AI. Is there anything that you could share with us that you may have already come across with in terms of that? Because it's very helpful. Like for me as a coach, some of our teachers are still trying to figure out their space on how they can support their English learners and students with disabilities. But at the same time, maybe AI could somehow maybe help in, what do you call this, in kind of like personalizing that education for the kids. Have you encountered any of those?
So, in all e-learning platforms, AI is being embedded, and it comes up in different ways. Um, you might be familiar with something like Immersive Reader.
Oh yeah.
That's been around for a long time, but uh, e-learning, in terms of course creation, like even if I'm in person, I'm creating something with Google Classroom or
Yep.
Canva or whatever, that as I'm creating the learning experiences as an educator, I'm pulling in tools, partnering apps, things that go into the experience from day one, that are there, and can be used as the learners move through the course. So whether I'm teaching live and learners have their cell phones or an iPad, or they have, like you were mentioning, stations, and they're using their laptops to create something in a group, that we're embedding different AI driven apps. And as I mentioned before, even like Office 365, Copilot, things are already in there. Even if we're just using basic Office apps for learners to, say, type an essay, um, and or Google. So, I'm not sure if there's, depending on if you're doing math or you're doing literacy,
Right.
there's different, it shows up in different ways. But I think,
Different ways.
for an educator to be looking for those embedded apps and
Uh,
tools. Like if you're using Canva, you can pull in, Nearpod, and
yeah.
Nearpod has read aloud, and Canva also has immersive reader as well. So more than one way to have things. For example, text to speech or speech to text, just
Yeah,
as one
speech to
example.
text. Yeah, I love those features. I guess we just don't recognize that that's actually AI, right? You did mention about the risks, like when AI gets the information or something like that. Um, I was trying to remember what you said about.
Sure. Um, so if you're using, for example, ChatGPT,
Mhm.
and it's a more recent version, the earliest versions didn't go out on the internet. They just pulled from the data that was already used to teach the AI to generate an answer
And
in
yeah,
text. But now, when it goes out on the web, it's pulling from anything it can find that it finds is
okay,
relevant, fits the pattern. So just to be aware that it could pull in a song, it could pull in someone's published work, it could
okay,
claim an author wrote a book about such and such and quote it, but that book and author don't even exist. It's a hallucination. So you just have to really be careful
be
about what it
careful.
generates, and try to vet the information that it brings
Definitely.
out.
I wonder if our students already know how to vet the information that they use, or
Definitely
how
something to teach them. Yeah.
something. Yeah, that's true. That is true. And and hopefully on my next live, we can push forward and kind of teach our educators, especially in the Philippines, on how they can actually leverage AI and at the same time use it ethically, for our students to use it ethically and all that. So, that being said, you mentioned to me that you are putting together an organization that advocates for AI literacy. Can you tell us more about that, Beth? Because I'm so excited to learn more about that, to help our teachers, to be, the proponents of AI and not the enemy of AI.
Yeah. Well, it's still being created. My hope is that I could create, an LLC that allows me to pull together some of the best teachers I know, yourself included, like we've talked about, to provide a variety of services for educators. It could be a one and done professional development for just a department or a school, or it could be just a one-time meeting for, like, a mini coaching, micro coaching session. um, and the goal would be to help teachers get very personalized guidance on how they can use technology to best plan and deliver engaging, digitally digital age relevant instruction for diverse learners. So, with a little front end knowledge, as we talked about, it can be such a time saver to use a lot of these different technology
Yeah.
approaches. But just coming at it from the perspective of, we start with who the learners are in front of us, and what the content is that we need to deliver. And then we look at what is the technology that would best suit those needs, rather than, there's a million different, like, rabbit holes we could go down with technology. And the thought would be, those of us who maybe just, we're all, I myself especially, still learning every day. But for those us as educators that are a little further down the path, how can we come alongside those that want to give it a try, but just don't even know where to start, or maybe have started down the path and they've got to a barrier?
Yeah.
And this could focus on any content area, any age learner. It could focus on just, I have one awesome educator I've taught with online, and she's a licensed counselor. So, she can deliver all kinds of solutions, but particularly around SEL. And of course, mental health is such a huge need
Yes.
among learners of any age. So that's kind of the idea. It could be one and done, or you could sign up to do ongoing, coaching one-on-one or up to a whole school. And then the last component would just be, how can how can I facilitate policy at the school and district level where educators have a voice in
Yes.
co-creating that, and create some infrastructure around technology and
Technology.
AI. A lot of schools have policies for how to take a laptop home and sign
Yeah.
it out, but not a lot of schools have talked about some of the things we've talked about here of
Yes.
the realities of the upcoming workplace for learners and what that looks like in the classroom right now. And that
Yes.
takes some policy and some strategizing around at the school and district level. So I don't think you can have one without the other. I don't think you can have a teacher just on their own in their classroom figuring it out in isolation. And I don't think the district can come up with it all on their own without teacher voice. I think it's
Yes.
all of us in education in this
Yes.
new era figuring this out together. So that's what I hope my LLC, I don't even have a name for it yet. So ideas are welcome. But that's what I'm hoping to get
Yeah.
started here in the next several months. So thanks for
Well,
asking about it.
yes, I'm actually excited personally because I know that schools like mine will benefit with this kind of support, especially for teachers. And because at this point, our schools like, oh, students are using AI now, but we don't have any policies in place. We don't
Right.
even have a
Right.
guideline in place. And so, where do we start? But then again, like you mentioned, um, teachers have to have a voice when you're putting together, infrastructure or some guidelines school wide.
Right.
I work at a charter school, and so the school, we are our own district, and so we want some guidance as much as we could. That way, we properly support our students when using technology in the classroom, because at the end of the day, the goal is for our students to be successful, that when they get out of the schools and then they go to the workforce, these fantastic technologies that they're using in schools will actually help them provide in the long run, help
Right.
them become better, I don't know, workforce people outside. So
Yeah, and like where I live, there is state level guidance, but it's not like every school can afford
mhm,
staff to implement it. So again, it comes back to like teachers, no one has extra time, but I think a little bit of shared collaboration around some of this stuff, we can ultimately kind of chart the course we want to see, and figure it out together, because it's here. We're
it is
living it.
here and it's going to be here to stay.
Absolutely.
Yes, fantastic. We actually have, it's almost an hour already, Beth, and
Wow.
there's a whole lot to talk about AI itself. And I think the time is not enough. So I hope that we can follow up this
Sure.
conversation around AI, not just AI, but technology in general. I love technology. And by the way, everybody, Beth and I went to the same university. We both specialized in educational technology. That's why Dr. Dewhurst and Dr. White are
That's
here
right.
together. So we met at the residencies at our university. So we've been in touch, and I'm so glad, Beth, that you joined me today
Same. Thanks for
in
having me,
our
Carla.
little. Yes, I'm so happy, and I hope that you will also accept my future invitation, especially when comes a time that you've put together your LLC. That way, you can spread the word on how we can support our teachers through your guidance, through any tips or anything that will
Sure.
help schools put in guidelines and policies with the use of technology and AI
Sure.
specifically.
I invite anybody that watches this to find me on LinkedIn. You can see more of the things I've written about education and AI, and we can connect. I'd be happy to help any way I can.
Yes, I will. If you can share me those information, Beth, I will put it on my YouTube channel and also on my Facebook page. That way we can get in touch. But my LinkedIn, if you're in my LinkedIn, we're also friends on LinkedIn. So please, I'll show you my link for my channel. But thank you so much,
Thank
Beth,
you.
for your guidance, for all the ideas and anything and everything that you learned about AI. I'm gonna continue to learn. I bet you are too.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
let's keep in touch. And once again, this is Dr. White. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm gonna put my outro pretty soon. So Beth, I'll see you around. And everybody, thank you so much for joining. And I hope that you've learned a thing or two about AI. And I will see you out there. Bye.